Motors.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I think it's probably going to be a boring speech because I was sort of told nobody wanted a company commercial, and I was not to attack any other energy forms. Let me just a quickie on my ever since retirement from General Motors, I'm kind of on the lecture circuit. Some are paid, I like those, some are pro bono like this one. But I had a gig, I think it was by Deloitte & Touche, and it was in Houston, and it was the Deloitte & Touche annual oil and gas conference, and I was to be the keynote speaker. So I was prepared to go down there, and I had a magnificent speech prepared about how petroleum reserves, remember this is 3 or 4 years ago, before the shale gas revolution. And I prepared this speech about how known reserves are running out, especially in the United States. The offshore drilling is not permitted. Drilling in Anwar, where the nearest reindeer is about 3,000 miles away from where they want to drill. They wouldn't let them drill in Anwar, and gradually all possibilities for drilling were kind of being reduced, and that the oil industry and gas industry should should change their mindset from being petroleum companies to being energy providers and look at alternative fuels and, you know, buy bacteria farms to produce biological gasoline and get with it with the sun and the waves, the tides, and the wind. And I had this neat speech prepared, and I was going to be on at lunch. For once, I went to the morning session, and from about 8 o'clock to 12 o'clock, I saw oil executive after oil executive, oil analyst after oil analyst come up and talk about this sudden glut in gas and oil due to fracking. So if you've ever seen a speech rewritten on the fly, that was it. I'm actually grateful, and I think we should all be grateful to the petroleum industry. They didn't have a lot of government help. All of their conventional drilling possibilities were cut off. And by the use of new technology, they were able to go into fracking, and they are the ones that have created the current bounty of cheap natural gas, which benefits American industry, and it's the cheap natural gas which is fueling all of this revolution in alternative drives for motor vehicles. That's what's doing it, is the fact that natural gas has suddenly become plentiful and cheap, and it helps electrification of automobiles too, which is what I'm going to talk about. When you think about it, vehicle electrification, if you started out to design an absolutely efficient vehicle, you would make it electric, because there are very few driveline losses. You usually don't need a transmission. There are very few moving parts. You're saving, compared to the internal combustion engine with an automatic transmission. Automatic transmission probably contains 800 or 900 parts, all finely machined. An engine also contains a huge number of precision machine parts. If you had to invent the internal combustion engine and the automatic transmission today, it would be a huge technological undertaking, because it's been developing over 110 years through successive approximation, and it is so complex. How about if we didn't have the internal combustion engine, and somebody said, I want you to design an engine with a lot of holes in a metal block, and I want this thing inside that we're going to call a piston to go up and down 4,000 feet a minute, and every second time it comes up, we need something to light a fire in there. And that fire is going to drive the piston back down. And then we need a system to get the used gas back out, new gas back in, and the gases going out have to be totally cleaned up by the time they hit the tailpipe. I mean, everybody would say it's impossible. Whereas electric drive is simple, it has very few moving parts, requires almost no maintenance, requires no transmission, requires no catalytic converter, requires no reduction in emissions because there aren't any. And electric vehicles, as I'm sure that Mayor Forster will agree, who is a fellow Volt owner, and we thank him for his custom, by the way. Electric vehicles are dead silent, they're smooth, they're slick. Everybody who gets in a Chevrolet Volt for the first time remarks that it feels like a $100,000 luxury limousine, and that's because of the slick, quiet, almost I would say unctuous driving experience. It's a real thrill, and this silent acceleration, it really is something to behold. Okay, so if they're so good, how come there are so few of them? And why has the electric vehicle sort of failed to live up to the promise of 4 or 5 years ago when the hype for electric vehicles, fueled by an overly enthusiastic news media, led many people to believe that in a very short time everybody's next car was going to be electric? Well, they forgot one thing. They forgot the fact that battery technology, although it has come a long way, it is simply not good enough yet to provide the range that most people expect from their cars and trucks at a price that's affordable. If you buy the Tesla's $110,000 model, you get a 280-mile range on a good day. But very few people are in the market for $110,000 cars, and the rest of us who drive cars in the $30,000 to $40,000 range have to make do with an electrified range of up to 80 miles on a good day. On a cold day or on a very hot day, that 80 miles can be as low as 60 miles, and it just doesn't work. And Mayor Bob Forster talked about range anxiety, much as he loved his electric RAV4, but I own 2 electric scooters, and I will tell you, a pure electric, and range anxiety is very real. You say, well, how come you don't have fuel anxiety? How come you don't have range anxiety in a piston engine vehicle? The reason is piston engine vehicles, by and large, provide ranges of 300 or 400 to 500 miles. So you watch your gas gauge, and the gas gauge moves very slowly. And by the time you're down to 1/8 of a tank, you know you've probably only got 40 or 50 miles left, and it's predictable. Because a gasoline-powered car, a diesel-powered car will give you, a tank full will give you 450 miles on a cold day. It'll give you 450 miles on a hot day. It's pretty predictable and reliable. Well, on batteries today, it isn't. My Chevy Volt, on a 65-degree day, that battery will give me 42 miles electric before the generator kicks in. In Michigan, temperatures this winter, when we had like -6, the battery range, when I lit up the car, the battery range said 21 miles. So your range can literally be cut in half by weather conditions. And that is, again, a limiting factor to the adoption of electric vehicles today. How's that going to be solved in the future? Well, everybody's working on advanced battery technology. Next generation of batteries will probably be a compound called lithium sulfur, which shows the promise of increasing the energy density of today's batteries by a factor of 5. So the 40 miles of electric drive in a Chevy Volt would become 200 miles. A generation after that is lithium air, which is known as, it's used by the CIA a lot and the military. It's a primary battery, and it's small. And you can't be recharged today. But lithium air has 10 times the energy storage capability of lithium ion. The only problem with lithium air, as I said, it cannot yet be recharged. But there are a bunch of research institutes, battery companies, universities, and so forth that are all working on the ability to recharge lithium air batteries. I'm also associated with a company called Energy 2. Energy 2 is working on new compounds for anodes and cathodes because a lot of the energy density capability is being lost by the lack of electrode capability. There's a promise of in the relatively short term of doubling the energy density of lithium-ion batteries by better anodes using lower resistance anodes and cathodes. So there's a lot going on. And I do believe that in 10 to 15 years' time, and this is what's it's going to require for the real breakthrough of electric vehicles, and it's going to come. There's no question that it's going to come, but it's going to require a medium price. Let's stay with cars rather than I'm going to talk about pickups and vans in a second. It's going to require that a medium price car, like $25,000 to $30,000, with a range of 400 miles, be priced no higher than today.